Back in the early 90s, I came across this record. I believe it was even in the CD. It was a CD, but I believe it was in the even the used section of CDs. And I'd either heard of it in advance or I saw a sticker right on the CD. I'm pretty sure I heard of it in advance. And the CD sticker said something like, "This is the best album I've heard all year," or "best band I've heard all year," and it was from Michael Stipe, and it was stuck to this record. I bought it instantly because I was such a REM fan, and they've turned me on to so many bands. Usually ones that influenced them, but also sometimes just talking about what they're listening to now, and that was pretty high praise indeed. So I picked it up and immediately was pretty captivated by this band. Features Grantley Phillips on vocals, who's on the cover there, Paul Kimball on keyboards, no, bass, and then Joey Peters on keyboards and bass, I think, and then Joey Peters on drums. And this album is great. I love the name too. It's like Grant Lee Buffalo. Okay, his name's Grant Lee Phillips, but they sing so much about America. They reference um, John Wilkes Booth, and look at the name Grant. Lee, the two Civil War generals, and Buffalo, which is native to the United States. And there's so many current things that seem very current now. He's got a song in there called "America's Snoring," which, my God, yeah, it's like they're accusing America of being asleep at the wheel in 1993, and reference all kinds of issues we're dealing with right now. So, found that really interesting, having not listened to this album in quite a while. I picked it up because I had heard that these albums were available on LP finally, and that they had killer pressings. And if you look at Discogs, it's just full of rave reviews around this. You can hear just all kinds of details. It sounds very warm, sounds very clear. You can hear vocals more clearly than maybe in the past. And the LP is just it's super silent. It's super flat. The only complaint I've seen, which I think is kind of silly, is that you have to turn up your receiver or your amp quite a bit to hear it compared to other records. But if that's what it takes to have a really dynamic record, bring it on. I just hope I don't leave my stereo at that kind of volume and put on maybe a normal record. Might be a little surprising or a little shocking if you put it on late at night or whatever, and your other records kicked in at a much louder volume. But definitely would not discourage anybody for getting this record for that reason. Like I said, I think it's pretty silly. But this was the first Grantley Buffalo record. They're from LA. Originally, I was going to kind of compare them to Grateful Dead with Americana, because I'm kind of getting into two of their records too, American Beauty and Working Man's Dead, more. I just picked up some amazing copies of that, 50th anniversary copies that sound absolutely incredible. Okay, I'll show the record. Since I was going to talk about it, I guess I am. Working Man's Dead and American Beauty. I was never a Dead fan. It's taken me quite a while to come around to them. These records, I find, are finally communicating to me, speaking to me. It took long enough, but that's one thing I love about music. Things that really spoke to you 20 years ago might not do much for you now. Maybe they will a year or two from now. And some bands, I find it a little bit more rare, but it does happen, that I just kind of wanted nothing to do with back in the day, I come around to, and I tend to really appreciate them. And that's definitely happening with those two records, which you would for sure probably call Americana, right? And that's what I like about them. They're not like the jammy, endless solos and endless jams kind of thing that they're so known for. Maybe someday I'm going to warm up to that, but I really like the fact that these are like 10 solid songs per record, pretty stripped down, sound great. I tend to listen to them in the morning. I think they sound so good. It's such a positive thing for me anyway. It feels very positive to start my day off that way. So I'll do that fairly often. I went through a streak of doing that back in the winter, which I had another Grateful Dead fireside chat actually about these records, or about me getting into the Dead after a long time. So I don't need to cover that too much. But just suffice to say, I picked up those copies recently, and I'm extremely happy. But yeah, I was thinking about the two sides of Americana, like either sounding really like Americana, which Scrantley Buffalo certainly do on certain songs. I mean, the songs that I like best, to be honest, too, like Jupiter and Teardrop, kind of, or Fuzzy. Fuzzy's more like that. Off the next album, I'm going to talk about Mockingbirds, but they also can really, really turn on the rock and get very, very political, which I like. But I became a big fan of them. With this album, I especially loved the Shiny or Jupiter and Teardrop, Fuzzy, Wish You Well, You Have to Be Crazy, the last song. But listening to it again, I'm just, especially song like America's Snoring, I'm just like, wow, yeah, wow, 1993. How long ago was that? Wow, could never probably have predicted just how crazy things would get now, or maybe he did. But yeah, I should go see Grantley Phillips again and see what he's saying from the stage these days. The other one, of course, I'm going to do my reach around here and try not to knock over the one behind it, is Mighty Joe Moon. And this record is the one that if most people, if they know Grantley Buffalo, they know this record, and they know it because of a song on here called Mockingbirds, which got some airplay on the alternative stations back in 1994. This came out. Again, a really solid record. Having this on vinyl has allowed me to hear things I didn't hear before. Picking up on lyrics on Mockingbirds, or maybe it's because I have the lyrics in front of me. I had both of these on CD, but I don't know if either the lyrics weren't included or I never really read into things that much at the initial round. But having these in front of me and really kind of getting into them and looking at the depth of them has really shown me some lyrics I didn't know of, and especially the political side of it. Like a song like Lone Star Song, which kicks off this album, is all about David Koresh and the Branch Davidians and religious freedom and all that. It's really quite powerful. I tend to go back to this album more for the pseudo love or love lost songs like Happiness and Honey Don't Think. It's the Life, I think, is just this perfect little song about, I guess, life. It sounds super corny, but it doesn't when you listen to it. It's just a great, great little song. Honey Don't Think, I think, has one of the best lyrics that sticks with me. Did you learn to read minds? In the case of mine, do you read in the dark? I love that song. It's a Life. The lyrics all the way through are just so good, and yeah, it's just a very, very rich album. Again, you could call it Americana. It does definitely touches on that. It also just completely rocks out. Maybe not as much as the first one, but fantastic band. Super happy that both of these records, the first two, Fuzzy and Mighty Joe Moon, are out on vinyl now and sound this good, and that somebody's taken the care to make sure they sound this good. And I'm just hoping that the other two records they made, one is Copperopolis, which came out, I think, in 96, 95 or 96. It's one that I didn't get into as much, and I blame it on getting a promo. I didn't have the artwork, and I think I just wasn't as interested in it, probably because of that. I am looking forward to getting that one on vinyl to really kind of rediscover it, because of the four albums, it's the one was played the least by me. And then Paul Kimball left, so it became just Grantley Phillips and Joey Peters, and their sound changed quite a bit. I at first was a little hesitant about it. It was more of a conventional rock sound, kind of with a little bit of attitude, fuller, much fuller. You lose a member and you gain this full sound. I don't know quite how that worked. I think it's more like when it came out, 1998. I think you're getting more, slightly more beefy recordings from albums, from artists. And some people were talking about how it's kind of glammy, or I read that in a review, and I kind of see that too. I played the album a lot and really learned to like it. This album's called Jubilee, and I saw them live on that tour, and it was so good. I was up really close. It was in Minneapolis at Fine Line, and it just was one of those shows that was just so much fun. Harvey Danger opened up, and I remember they bitched at everybody because they played their big song, and like Minneapolis can be a pretty harsh audience. Nobody got up. Everybody just sat on the floor in front of them when they're playing the big song. I was embarrassed, actually. I was embarrassed for myself and everybody that was with me. But when Grantley Buffalo came on, everybody was on their feet, and it was just such a good show, such a good rock show. And I was really curious how they would go forward after that. But they didn't. That was the last album. There have been some reunions since, no new material. I remember one time when I was visiting San Francisco before I moved there, I was super, super close to where they were playing. Found out that day, got very excited, and was going to go, but then everything was completely sold out. So, yeah, kind of bummed I never saw that, but I'd much rather take seeing the band in their original incarnations. I saw them once with as a band too. They were before. I mean, when I say a band, I mean with Paul Kimball touring this album before Jubilee, when they were just two people, not two people on stage, by the way. But anyway, when I saw them with Paul Kimball, I think I only saw them once, although it seems like I might have seen them twice with him. But I remember it was this Twisted Christmas show in Minneapolis in like winter of '94, I think, like December of '94, and it was such a diverse or such an interesting lineup. You had Hole, Grantley Buffalo, um, Big Audio Dynamite or Big Audio, and a couple other bands. What I remember most about it was Courtney Love going on and on and on and bitching at Mick Jones for apparently taking advantage of her when she was a kid, which made everybody incredibly uncomfortable and just kind of a weird dynamic. And she opened up, so we kind of heard this very early on in the night. Anyway, that's not related to Grantley Buffalo directly, but an interesting story, I think. But yeah, these albums are great. They sound really good. I think they're a band that kind of deserves a reappraisal. If you haven't discovered them, they're new, give them a shot. And either one of these records would be a great place to start. I probably would go maybe with the one I'm showing right now first. It's a little bit more accessible, and it's got just, I think, more killer, just biting lyrically songs, and just the moving songs that I love, like It's the Life, Happiness, Honey Don't Think, Mockingbirds. So yeah, Grantley Buffalo. And Grantley Phillips went on to have a solo career. Seen him a number of times. I was really into him right after this. He used to be very active on the web, leave a lot of updates on his websites. He put out a kind of self-released EP. I think it was 8 songs. I should see if I still have it on CD. And also he's put out several solo records by this point. But I remember he shocked me and probably his whole audience when he put out an album called Mobilize after that very stripped down EP, and also playing a lot of shows and hearing all these songs that were in the works. He put out this album that was much more kind of, I wouldn't say experimental, but he's playing around with drum machines and going for a very modern sound. I love it. I actually love it. I'm looking forward to playing it probably after this video. I haven't heard it in years. Mobilize. And then gradually I think I just kind of lost a little interest in him. I'll always listen to his new records. I saw him live with Kristen Hirsch a while ago in San Francisco, and I was very disappointed with the whole show. And I didn't think either one of them put on a good show. It seemed like they're kind of walking through the motions. That happens sometimes, but who knows what outside forces, circumstances were going on. But hell of an artist, hell of a band, Grantley Buffalo. So I'll leave you with that. And yeah, those Dead albums they're pretty good too.